This week's episode of Pop Culture Reference is sponsored by S-Mart. Shop smart. Shop S-Mart.
Broadcasting live from the same movie again, but better in only 7 minutes. This is Pop Culture Reference, your one-stop reference for all things pop culture. I'm one of your hosts, Groovy Strother.
And I'm one of your other hosts, Seamus Groovy Connolly. I couldn't think of my
was
own.
Right there, Seamus.
S-Mart Connolly?
S-Mart Connolly.
Oh, man. We're going to really get into the whole S-Mart of it all later, because I know you haven't seen Ash versus the Evil Dead, but we're not talking about that today. We're talking about the original 3 Evil Dead movies, 2 Evil Deads and an Army of Darkness, if you will. It's going to be a lot to talk about. We've got 3 movies of madness.
And it's going to be an especially wild episode this week because since we pre-recorded last week, there has been just a metric ton of news, plus we have 2 episodes of The Mandalorian to cover leading up to the season finale next week, so we really better get into it.
Starting off with a few very notable artists that have passed in our little hiatus with our pre-record here. Starting with Klaus Teuber, he is the creator, original pioneer of modern tabletop games, creator of Catan, a game I've actually never played, and I know that's like the biggest phenomenon of all time, and since we've been playing D&D for the last couple years, I've definitely wanted to get into that a little more.
It is probably the most seminal contemporary tabletop board game, not because it's the best or even the most influential, but I think it's the one that normal people that aren't super into board games, it's their access point to get into the wider scope of what board games can be beyond Monopoly and like Parker Brothers,
yeah.
Basically.
I mean, it's like such an interesting space of like, it's a weird kind of roleplay thing. You got a whole Sim City idea going on where you're trying to build out a little bit. I mean, really the only thing I know about is from 30 Rock where Jack plays
the
Catan.
Colonizers of Lamar.
Yes, exactly. That's pretty much my idea of everything. But I'm sure that I'm very skewed in what I'm actually expecting here.
Well, sometime soon, Seamus, we're going to have to play and you can corner the wheat market, just like Jack Donaghy.
Yes, I will use a fire spell to create glass in the desert. I'm sure that is nonsense to anybody who's ever played Settlers of Catan.
Absolutely, it is. But up next in our little parade of tributes to fallen artists...
It's our in memoriam, it really is.
Yeah, it's Al Jaffee, who is most known as the singular voice behind Mad Magazines, who continued doing the fold-in. He was like 103 when he died, and I know that I need to look up if this actually happened. I saw a panel a number of years ago now where there were a few guys from Mad Magazine on there, and they talked about how, yeah, Al, he still comes into the offices, and he always drops off the fold-in all the time, and he's already made the one for when he dies.
What? Oh, man. I would love to see what that is. That is the kind of the best sense of humor I've ever heard. That guy was ready for it.
So, pretty big legend. Mad Magazine definitely left an imprint on my young life, as I'm sure it did yours, Seamus.
Yeah, I was kind of mentioning it to you before. It's like my older brother would get the magazines at like a 7-Eleven sometimes, and I would pick them up after he was done with it, and it was truly older brother kind of humor. It's kind of gross, it's kind of stupid and silly, but it was honestly the best. I mean, I still see it sometimes, and I think about picking one up. I remember we also had like the hardcover bathroom companion book.
Oh, that is a funny book.
And it was it is probably still in my parents' bathroom to this day. It is definitely the best.
What, Me Worry?
Oh, absolutely classic. That guy is horrifying. He's a deadite to me. He's so creepy.
You don't like Alfred E. Newman?
He's freaky. He's like a Slappy the Living Dummy. He's gonna like murder me at some point.
I do think that's kind of the point, a little bit, of Alfred E. Newman.
All of Mad Magazine is truly pretty unsettling almost all of the time, so it clocks.
Agreed. I think one of the biggest cultural legacies that we're going to be talking about here today is Norman Reynolds, who was an absolutely prolific production designer and art director on films like the original Star Wars trilogy, Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first couple Superman movies with Christopher Reeve, Alien 3, Mission Impossible, Return to Oz. Just a absolute trove of immaculate artwork in 20th century cinema.
I mean, Raiders of the Lost Ark is one of the coolest designed movies I have ever seen to this day. It's incredible. And I mean, I know you are still stifling on Alien 3, if I'm not mistaken.
I have not seen Alien 3, that is true.
One of-
I've got your Blu-ray sitting on my shelf as it's been for like a year and a half.
Well, hey, I've got your Superman over here, I think, so we've kind of traded off here. I mean, I will just say, one of the best parts of Alien 3 is how all of the setting looks. Everything is, like, wet constantly and, like, insanely brutal angles and dark tunnels. It's really, really well done in this disgusting prison that he was a major part of creating.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine working as somebody that high up in the design department on the original Star Wars trilogy and the amount of impact that has had on pop culture as a whole.
I mean, even to this day, there'll be a new Mandalorian episode or something, and there's like something that was in the set dressing in the background of the originals that is now like a regular part of the lore that he helped design. It's incredible.
And kind of in the same vein as Norman Reynolds, another person who passed on since we last recorded was cinematographer Bill Butler, who shot classics like Jaws, Grease, Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation, a few Rocky movies, and the always underseen and underrated Capricorn 1.
I don't even know Capricorn 1, Garrett. I guess it's very underseen.
Well, you should really check it out. It's usually on Amazon Prime. It's about a group of astronauts who are selected to go to Mars as the first guys to land on Mars. And then when they get to go on their mission, they're going to fake the Mars landing. NASA's decided to fake the Mars landing.
That is awesome. I love that idea. That is super cool.
So, worth a watch is and it's gorgeously shot by Butler. I mean, he has such a great eye and is such a versatile cinematographer. I mean, Jaws and Grease look nothing alike, but they're both impeccably well shot.
Jaws is just like probably one of my favorite movies of all time, and it, like you were saying, it looks incredible. It's shot beautifully in the water and out. It is a marvel. That
shot of Quint out on the pulpit with the gun straddling him at sunset, I think about that shot all the time. I think about it probably once a week.
Yeah, before you were even done with that sentence, I had the image in my head. It is truly beautiful.
Yeah, so a massive lineup of cultural titans here who had a massive influence on pop culture as a whole from all different sectors of gaming and humor and cinematography and art design, but all coming together to create really seminal works.
Yeah, absolutely. It is major losses all around, but they had nothing if not massive cultural influence, probably for the rest of the different sectors that they were legends in.
But we've got a mountain of other news to get to, so let's go ahead and keep moving right along, Seamus. We cannot dwell today.
This next one's a bit of a surprise to me. The Marvels trailer dropped, and it makes me kind of into a Marvel movie. Like, is that crazy to say? We talk about it endlessly here. I am so done with Marvel stuff, but now I'm like kind of ready to watch Miss Marvel, a show I completely didn't even look twice at, but it looks like it's going to be a really fun movie.
That's my big takeaway from this trailer, is that Iman Vellani looks hilarious, and Miss Marvel is a show I didn't really have any interest in. That was definitely after I fell off all of these Disney Plus shows.
Mm-hmm.
I'm into it. I think it looks really fun. I mean, you know I like Brie Larson, even though I don't think that character is particularly interesting. I do think it's going to be really weird that we're doing a tentpole superhero film where your homework, you have to have watched 2 Disney Plus shows to understand what's going on at all.
And Granted, I feel like, I stand by WandaVision as one of the better shows that were put out there, and I like Monica Rambeau as a character a lot too, and I'm excited to see more of her weird powers, but it is a lot coming together here. It's not like an end game where you kind of just had to pluck along with the movies for however many years to get caught up. It is really homework, like you said.
But, like you, I am very surprised that this tone looks interesting and fun and appealing to me in an era where, I'm not interested in any Marvel outside of Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and we have not covered a Marvel trailer on this show in probably years.
Probably since, the Loki era, maybe?
Maybe, yeah.
But yeah, I think maybe I'll finally get caught up with the stuff I've just fully never wanted to see, because I don't know. I'm into the tone just as well as you are. I'm assuming the Nick Fury stuff is going to tie in with Secret Invasion too, which is I'm on the fence about right now.
What I was wondering, I'm like, do you think that is this a situation where we know Nick Fury is making it through Secret Invasion because this is set, I don't know where this is set in the timeline.
Yeah, I have no idea. I can only imagine it's fake Nick Fury, and it's going to be a scroll reveal at the end that'll lead right into maybe 2 Nick Furies on screen for an after credits thing.
It'll be interesting to see, especially because I don't care at all.
Yeah. Little to no pressure for this movie to be good, because if it's bad, I continue to not care, but I don't know. If it's at least as good as Multiverse of Madness, which was probably the last mainline movie thing I cared about, then I'm there for it.
Speaking of Disney holding down the gas pedal on franchises that have nothing left in the tank, Star Wars Celebration was last weekend, and you know how I feel about that, which is good, yes. Even though I shouldn't.
Well, we actually, the Ahsoka trailer alone was kind of enough for me to get insanely hyped about some of the stuff that's coming up.
Yeah, Ahsoka coming in August, which is earlier than I expected it to be happening.
It's Ahsoka : the Rebels continuation is what that trailer looked like to me.
Seeing Chopper in live action is obviously very exciting, and then Hera and Sabine in this trailer remind us what Star Wars is truly about, which is people wearing cool jackets.
Yes, absolutely. And I know they're going to get Zeb up in there now that we have had a little tease of that in The Mandalorian as of the last couple weeks. So I'm very excited.
I'm afraid to say that the part of this show that looks by far the least interesting to me is Ahsoka. I don't really care about what's going on with Ahsoka at this point in the timeline. I love Ahsoka as a character. I think she's great on Rebels, but I don't know, even though I think Rosario Dawson has done a good job bringing that character to screen in The Mandalorian Season 2 and the Book of Boba Fett, 2 things I famously love, I'm not sure. I think that she's kind of boring right now, and I think Filoni doesn't have the guts to actually give her real stakes in this part of the universe. I don't know, I'm excited to see Thrawn and Ezra, and I wish this show looked a little bit better, too. I think looking side by side, because there's a scene in the trailer that is directly from the Rebels finale. And looking at those side by side and how gray and washed out and grounded in live action that scene feels compared to how it looks in the Rebels finale, I'm kind of underwhelmed.
Well, I am still pretty optimistic about what I'm seeing. I can understand it's going to be a weird transition no matter what, I feel like, but it's about the character tone. If they can nail that down and really give us Rebels folk what we need right now, I think that Ahsoka might not even have to be the most interesting part of the Ahsoka show anyway. I think the most interesting parts of the Book of Boba Fett weren't Boba Fett, there are ways that they are slipping in a better show within shows that are maybe fine, that I'll take what I can in that kind of format that they've been using for The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, things like that.
Which is why I'm going back to, I just wish we were doing an animated Rebels season 5. Rebels Reborn, I think, was my pitch whenever we talked about this last.
If only. I don't know. They've got all their eggs in the Bad Batch basket, I think. I guess that show's wrapping up too now. I don't know where they're going in the animated sector besides more Visions, which they also announced.
Yeah, probably more Tales of the Jedi, stuff like that. I am sad to hear Bad Batch is ending. I'm most of the way through season 2 now, and things are heating up, Seamus. You better get on that.
I really have to.
But over in the Star Wars movie realm, we're taking what could we like more than taking the things that we're not super wild about on TV and putting them into a Dave Filoni directed movie that is going to tie up the Mando and Ahsoka storylines and is probably the only of the 3 movies announced that will actually come out.
Yeah, I mean, that's the truth. Or come out roughly on time, at least. I mean, I've also heard that this wrap-up movie is still, like, 5 or 6 years out, which is, I guess that makes sense, but, yeah, I don't know.
Do you think this is going to be a theatrical movie? I just don't...
Oh, yeah, I guess I assumed.
I don't think you could have... I don't think there's an audience for... Like... Imagine if Ahsoka showed up in episode 9, how confused mainstream audience, or even in something like like the fact that audiences were so confused when Maul showed up at the end of Solo. Imagine how confused they would be if they went to see the Mandalorian movie and they're like, what is all, like, who is Hera Syndulla and why do I care?
Why was there a big dramatic music swell when this green chick showed up? What the hell?
Exactly.
Yeah, I, for whatever reason, assumed it would be theatrical, but I guess it makes way more sense that it would be a Disney Plus drop. I would go see it in a theater. I mean, we would be there day one for sure. I think that would be a lot of fun, but if anything...
Seamus, you and I are cursed to carry Star Wars forever, though. That is our lot in life.
Just imagine 6 years down the line with however many more seasons of Ahsoka and Mando under our belts. How done we're gonna be with, like, all right, let's go stand in line for our movie tickets for The Mandalorian, the movie.
Interestingly, the other 2 movies here, I wish were happening in 10 years, and I am interested in them, and I don't understand why they're doing them so soon. I mean, I do, because money is the answer to that question.
Of course, always.
Because Daisy Ridley is back as Rey in a film set 15 years after the events of The Rise of Skywalker about Rey founding a new Jedi Order. And then at the opposite end of the timeline, James Mangold will be making a film set thousands of years before the High Republic and the Skywalker saga that's something of a biblical origin of the Jedi and the Force.
I mean, I love the idea of whatever a biblical film about the origins of the Jedi really means, because that, again, we're always looking for the mystery of the Force, the magic of the Force being like the anchor of what the Jedi are, and it gets lost a lot of the times in the new stuff here. So I think that would be an incredibly interesting thing to really reel it all the way back. And on the other hand, the Daisy Ridley comeback is more of a surprise than anything to me, and I guess I'm praying to God that they kind of follow through on some things that were massive things that were left undone by the end of episode 9. Like, if this new Daisy Ridley project means that we'll finally give some respect to John Boyega and give him a damn lightsaber and, like, follow through on all of the little breadcrumbs of maybe he's Force sensitive and maybe a student in the future, I'm there for it, even if I do not really like 2/3 of the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, it'll be a very interesting thing to see. Why, if they're setting it 15 years after Rise of Skywalker, why are they doing it now? It's confounding to me.
Yeah, because I remember when they wrapped up, or when they were wrapping up episode 9 stuff, when it was coming out, they were like, this is the end of these characters, and we're not doing any more, like, numbered things about the Skywalkers, and I doubt this is going to be like episode 10 or whatever.
No.
But
it basically is. It's basically, it sounds like to me, episode 9 redone or rewrapped, or
episode 9.5, where they give it like maybe a real ending for the characters that we care about. I don't know. There's a million ways for this to go absolutely wrong, and probably only like a handful of ways for it to redeem a lot of the stuff that people have problems with.
The last thing I'll say, and then we gotta move on to whatever our next piece of news might be. I feel like what they're trying to do right now, and we'll get into this in Mando Bros, is kind of do for the sequels what the Clone Wars did for the prequels, with these new live action shows that are set between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, where they're planting a lot of seeds about things that don't make sense when you take the sequels at face value.
Mm-hmm.
And based on that kind of analogy, I feel like this could be the Rebels of it, where you're taking things that should have gotten wrapped up by the prequels and the Clone Wars, but they didn't really get wrapped up, and then Rebels is going, okay, we're gonna actually put some of these storylines to bed. And I think that this could be that if it's good, and I hope it's good.
I mean, I will give it all of my benefit of the doubt here, you know? I tried to do that with all the sequel stuff anyway, and I'm hoping they heard all of the outcry of what people had problems with, and that they put a little respect on it, like you were saying, kind of like how the supplementary shows do retroactively put the respect on something like the prequels.
Seamus, you know what I bet you haven't heard in a while?
Is it about to blast my ears, Garrett? I don't know.
Warning!
Oh, gee, oh, God, I haven't had this bit in so long, oh, God!
And what a warning it is. There's so much to unpack here, because they had a big HBO Max Discovery Plus kind of like a showcase where they announced officially with details that the new HBO Max Discovery Plus merged streaming service is going to be titled just Max. Subtitle, The Place for HBO, which is insane.
That's so funny.
That will be unveiling on May 23rd with 3 price tiers. One in high definition 1080p with ads for $10 a month. One that is ad-free in HD 1080p for $15.99 a month. And finally, the ultimate ad-free 4K. You get 4 instead of 2 simultaneous streams and all the other goodies. Ultimate ad-free, $19.99 a month for Max. This will be replacing the HBO Max existing app, while Discovery Plus will continue to be its own service and not be impacted by these changes.
Oh my goodness. How many years have we been tracking just the evolution of the HBO streaming service that we're gonna subscribe to at the highest tier, probably?
It's almost time to do another pop culture reference. I remember when Max launched and we were like, go now, HBO Max. It's all moot. Okay, they're streamlining it, and now no more streamlining, because Max is the place for HBO. And there was a direct quote that was essentially like, HBO is associated with only the highest quality television, and we want to make it clear that we don't only have good stuff, we also have other things that you might want to watch.
That's so weird.
So bad stuff. But and in the spirit of bad stuff, Seamus, what if there were to be a 7-season remake of the Harry Potter saga where they are keeping the same music, the same castle design, the same logo, and going to make no demonstrable changes to the actual world building or tone, because that would not cohese with the theme park franchise empire that they have already sunk millions and millions and millions of dollars into. So it's essentially just going to be a Disney live action remake of a thing that's already live action and perfectly serviceable and very modern looking even by today's standards.
I that's a lot to take in right there, Garrett, but those are so many extra stupid details about this Harry Potter series that I did not know about, and oh my god, it makes so little sense to me. It's gonna be so long, and it's gonna drop. I can only imagine it's gonna drop off nearly instantly after the gimmick of, hey, it's a show version now, check it out. It's gonna be boring within the first season, because those, like you said, those movies are still pretty fun. You go back and you see little baby Daniel Radcliffe doing his thing, and your little baby Rupert Grint going bloody hell. You love it, but now they're just gonna. I don't know. It's so strange. There's already so much drama around the Harry Potter IP that is just going to be elongated for however many years it takes for them to churn this show out. It's bizarre.
And ignoring the J.K. Rowling, Hogwarts Legacy, Fantastic Beasts of it all, why on earth would you not just do, hey, it's another adventure set at Hogwarts with kids that are not Harry Potter? Like, you could be doing a TV show about young James Potter and Sirius Black and the Marauders map and that stuff.
That would be kind of awesome, actually. I would be in for that.
You could do something, you could do a Hogwarts Legacy where you're like, we're gonna go like 300 years ago to Hogwarts and do a completely different whole mystery thing that doesn't have to do with mainline Harry Potter. And, you know, like, you could High Republic it. There's so many different ways that you could go, and their decision was, nah, let's just remake the thing that everybody already likes again.
So lazy and boring. Like, I cannot express enough that one of the coolest parts of the Harry Potter world, the Tri-Wizard Tournament, gets no love. They could have done a whole sports TV show where it's like Major League Tri-Wizard Tournament wizard stuff, or a Quidditch show. God, anything.
I was about to say, what if you just did Ted Lasso, but with Quidditch?
But with Quidditch, just exactly. That would be kind of awesome.
A Muggle coach has to coach the
great.
Quidditch team.
We are making 1,000 better ideas than what this show is going to turn out to be. I just think it's going to be boring. There's no reason.
I have no intention of watching. If I want to watch Harry Potter, I'm going to watch Harry Potter.
I mean, I like many things that I already hate just hearing about it. I want to watch it out of just pure curiosity. I want to see, you know, even the casting of what that show is going to be like might be enough to confuse me into starting it at some point. But I mean, like you're saying,
Timothy Chalamet Snape, you ready for that?
Honestly, if he can hit the voice, that'd be pretty funny. I'm into it.
Well, the stock market is not into it because HBO, Warner Brothers Discovery stock, I should say, dropped a whopping 6% the day of the Max presentation, and I really hope between this and the whole Attorney General maybe investigating Warner Brothers Discovery for corporate malpractice, they might reevaluate some things and not go this direction. I don't think that's gonna happen, but, you know, we can keep our little fingies crossed.
I mean, hey, if they're not going to listen to the consumers of their services at all over the last however many years we've been covering this, I mean, their stock is dropping. That's the bottom line of every single poor decision that we've witnessed for our Warner warnings here, pretty much. So if anything, it might actually get them to take a look. That is... Even a coin flip is better than the chances we had up until now, pretty much.
Rest assured, Seamus, your eardrums are not safe for the foreseeable future. But why don't we go ahead and move on to our main segment, to the Evil Dead Trilogy.
Groovy, let's do it.
For today's main segment, we're going to be talking about The Evil Dead, Evil Dead 2 Dead by Dawn, and finally, Army of Darkness.
The wildest trilogy of movies I have maybe ever seen. I've definitely seen The Evil Dead, the OG, a million times, and rewatching The Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness was a roller coaster for this episode, if I'm being honest. I watched them all back to back pretty much for this episode, and it's a tonal whiplash, content whiplash. Ash Williams is 3 different characters, basically, in these movies. It's kind of the best, but boy, did it confuse me as a kid when I was watching these movies.
Well, that's the funny thing about Ash, is that in the first movie, he's not a character. In the second movie, he's Bugs Bunny. And in the third movie, he is an actual, real, developed character who's maybe Elvis Presley? I don't know. We'll get into that when we get to Army of Darkness.
But yeah, I know you had never seen Army of Darkness until now. Do you have any general thoughts for this weird cap on this trilogy?
Well, we've talked at length before, especially during our Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness episode, that we are Raimi boys. I love Sam Raimi. I can't really believe that I never got to Army of Darkness before now, because I'm a big fan of the first 2 Evil Dead movies, even though they are very different movies from each other.
Yes.
And Army of Darkness is just as different from them as they are from each other, if not more so, because It is not what I was expecting at all, somehow, which is very weird, because you would think that somebody with as much exposure to the concepts of Army of Darkness, obviously I know about This Is My Boomstick, and, and a lot of the more iconic moments in that film. It's kind of crazy to me that I didn't realize how much of a straight comedy that movie was going to be, with really very... You know, I've always thought it was stupid that that movie wasn't called Medieval Dead like Sam Raimi originally wanted it to be called. And now I'm like, no, that movie's not Medieval Dead. That movie is Army of Darkness. Medieval Dead would be a promise for a movie that is not. And
yes,
its title is better because it's not Medieval Dead, which is a shame because I like the title Medieval Dead a lot.
I mean, it's a great time. And I mean, even rewatching Army of Darkness, it's weirdly like it's Bruce Campbell versus the Army of Darkness in the opening crawl, which is strange.
So, I mean, I think we're going to have to wait to call spoilers on more specifics, but overall, I'm a big fan of this trilogy. I'm very interested to see Evil Dead Rise, which is the entire reason that we are covering this trilogy right now, which appears to have a lot more in common with something like the original The Evil Dead, or even the Evil Dead remake that came out maybe 10 years ago. But apparently it's I have no idea what kind of relevance this holds to the story or the world, but apparently it's in the continuity of these first three, so that'll be an interesting thing to look for Easter eggs. Maybe there's an S-Smart or something.
Oh, there's gotta be. I mean, you also have not had much exposure to Ash versus the Evil Dead either.
That is true, yes.
So yeah, I mean, between what I've seen of that show and these three movies, I never saw the 2013 remake.
It's supposed to be really scary.
Yeah, I mean, I'm into that. That's all I hear about it. But continuity is such a funny idea with this franchise. You know, it's like every subsequent installment of The Adventures of Ashley Williams takes so much from the previous, but asks you to basically throw it all out anyway. And even in, like, we were talking the other day about how the Army of Darkness is sometimes even thrown out completely in the continuity of, like, Ash versus the Evil Dead or the remakes or something like that. But it's still, like, all, like, very, very specifically referencing things that are maybe struck from the record anyway. It's so wild and bizarre. I love that it's so confusing and strange. And I kind of want to maybe watch that 2013 one with you at some point so we can, you know, chatter, like hug each other when it gets to when the fire hydrant of blood comes out of someone's mouth at some point.
I was gonna say, if you let me literally hide behind you on the couch, Seamus, I am completely down to do that.
Oh my goodness.
I'd like to see it. And Raimi and Campbell were producers on that one, I think, as they are in the new one, so...
Yes, I do know that they were, and there are plenty of Easter eggs. That's the only other thing I know about it. What else I could say non-spoilery wise, but I mean, I can't express enough the tonal dissonance between even the first two movies. The first movie is scary. It is a straight horror movie. It is disgusting to see.
It's a lot funnier than I remember it being. We'll get into that in a little bit of spoilers. Like, there were parts where I laughed out loud, which I did not remember in my previous viewings of The Evil Dead, finding it very humorous.
There are a couple really good spots where you get to laugh, but it also seems like in that first one that some of those might just be the low budget directorial debut of it all, and it's like it's maybe just kind of on the day that's what they had for the shot, and that's why it's kind of funny and out of place a little bit.
My roommate was walking through when I was watching the first one, and she was like, this looks like a student film. And I was like, it basically
yeah, it is. It is.
Sam Raimi was 19, I think, when he made that movie, which is crazy. I mean, good for him.
I was gonna say, for that young, it's a classic to this day. Like I said, that's the one I've seen over and over again, and I will always come back to it. It is one of my classic favorites. But now that I've revisited the other ones, The Evil Dead 2 is one of the best movies I have ever seen. It is so genuinely fun to watch.
I don't mean to be hyperbolic, but I think Evil Dead 2 might be one of the best movies ever made.
It's incredible. I don't even take that as hyperbole. It's so expertly done. It is the true evolution of it. It's like we got to see the rough draft and then it's perfected in the sequel. It's perfect.
Sam Raimi, man. He knows what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing, and he's an absolute madman about everything that he does, and that's why these movies are never gonna go out of style.
But should we go ahead and call spoilers so we can get into the bloody nitty-gritty of it all?
I would love to. This is the official spoiler curtain here. The Evil Dead, like I cannot sing its praises enough. It is foul. It is disgusting to see. It is some of my favorite practical gore effects of all time. It is better than any of the other ones with however much technical special effects advancement that they put on the monsters in the sequels. The first one is so gross.
That pencil going to that ankle is one of the most upsetting things I've ever seen in any movie ever.
It's so rough, man. It is genuinely that specifically is the worst. It's all the stuff where it's like you're seeing skin just like melt. It's the worst.
It's kind of aware of jokiness in a way that Evil Dead 2 is much more self-aware, but they do little things like the cut to the blender that's all red like blood right before anything starts going wrong in the movie, and things like there are little moments of self-awareness before it really starts to horrify you.
Yeah, I didn't realize how much of a slow burn that first one was. I mean, he takes such beautiful time zooming in on like clocks and windows and doors, and it's such any other kind of way to shoot that without 100,000 Dutch angles and close-ups.
I mean, there are plenty of Dutch angles. Don't get me wrong.
No, I'm saying like that's the point. If it was shot any other way, I might get a little bored of how long they take to get to how insane it then eventually turns into. But I just love how much time they take.
They've got that really good shot of the girl sitting in the rocking chair with the pendulum from the clock going in front of her. That has some great atmosphere, just an impending sense of doom as you know those Deadites are coming. But the beginning is also where a lot of the comedy is. Ash's terrible direction giving cracks me up. I also love him honking and the two fishermen waving and him telling them to go to hell.
Not you. Yeah, that was very funny. I didn't remember how funny and terrible Scotty was. Like at the beginning I was like, why isn't this franchise Ash and Scotty? And then he's like, let's just leave your girlfriend and escape ourselves. He's such a jerk the whole movie, and I kind of love it.
Did you remember how much Scotty looks like Norm Macdonald? Because I did not.
I thought the exact same thing, and I did not remember that at all. Oh man, Scotty's Deadite form is one of the grosser. Like he has some of the best melted face flesh thing going on, even though he gets not as much time as some of the other Deadites up in here.
Well, but do you even need more screen time when Bruce Campbell puts his entire thumb into your eye socket?
Oh, both eye sockets, mind you. He really squishes them boys. Oh, Jesus.
I want to ask you something, and maybe this is gonna accidentally propel us into other films that we haven't started talking about really yet. But I asked you a question yesterday to think about it, and I want you to come back with me. What to you, when you think of Evil Dead as a franchise, is the iconic Evil Dead image?
I was thinking about this since you asked me the other day, and I feel like my mind always goes to, it's a close-up Dutch angle on Bruce Campbell's face being sprayed with blood while he's screaming on the floor. Is that what you're thinking of?
No, but that's a pretty good one.
That one, I always get. Wait, what are you thinking of? Maybe that's also gonna spring into my mind.
I think mine is because it was the first glimpse of any Evil Dead that I ever knowingly saw, and it stuck with me. The image of the chained up cellar opening and that evil white Deadite face just looking out and taunting you. I used to have nightmares about that image off of like a 10-second clip I saw on TV once.
Dude, I mean that is truly that's a one green square on Framed if I see that cellar door. You know what I mean? Like that is truly the most iconic that cellar door. I wish they did more with it in the second one.
They really don't do anything with it in the second one. I was trying to remember what happened with it, but Ash cuts it open and kicks it out.
Yeah, exactly. They don't milk it as much as they do in the first one, and it's so good in the first one. Watching as he's burying his girlfriend, I think, after he knocks her head off, and it keeps cutting back to the cellar door, like slowly being jammed open, like the rusty nails being pried out of the wood. Oh, it's the best.
I also love the extended POV of the Deadeye looking around from the cellar door, and all of the Ash and Scotty and everybody else just slowly freaking out before the reveal, before you even get to the iconic shot I was talking about earlier of showing her just a little bit in shadow and it being unnerving and unsettling, and you're trying to figure out what she actually looks like that's freaking out them so much. What happened to her eyes?
Oh, man. It is so iconic horror. It is like probably genuine. It's like Halloween, The Evil Dead, and Nightmare on Elm Street, maybe, in terms of like classic horror out there, is top 3 for sure.
I think a big part of the reason that this movie is as scary as it is and not more this is really dumb and campy is the sound design, not only of the Deadites, which are
oh my god
horrifying.
The wailing, the like weird triple harmonic screaming is so unsettling.
But even the ambience of things that make sounds that shouldn't make sound, that make the environment feel alive, the evil feel alive. Like, there's a scene where the camera is looking down, it's going over rafters, and every time it passes a rafter, it goes...
Oh yeah, like it's a physical thing.
That is super
great.
Unsettling. Yeah. You want to jump over now that we've kind of hit a lot of the low budget charm of the Evil Dead and talk about how that is translated in Evil Dead 2?
Yes, I feel like it is very necessary to talk that out. We referenced it in our intro. The recap that is done for the first Evil Dead movie in like less than 10 minutes in the sequel it's bonkers. It should be illegal in cinema. It made no sense to me as a kid before I understood what the hell was going on. When I got like a DVD of it from the record store and I popped it and I was like, why did he come back to this cabin? He had a horrible time the first time he was here. He brought another girlfriend to this cabin? What the hell?
I do love that Linda is a different actor in every movie. That is really funny to me, that we see the same thing happen 3 times with 3 different Lindas.
But she's always got that University of Michigan sweater on. That's how you know it's Linda.
And you know why the Evil Dead 2 begins with a remake, essentially, of Evil Dead 1?
I actually don't know why he did that.
They couldn't get the rights to use old footage from the first one, so they went back and reshot it.
Wild. That's crazy. I mean, it's not to the detriment of that movie. I feel like it's so weird and noticeable and strange that it fits right in with the rest of the weird, noticeable, strange things that happen in the Evil Dead 2.
Especially because this second one is such a cartoon that trying to go back and fit tonally the clips from the first one in, it would feel so dissonant. It would feel so weird.
Definitely. Even, like I was talking about the creature design, the Deadite design of the first one versus the second one is so different that it would just feel weird.
I do have to say, I think that iconic, one of the greatest ending shots of all time from the first Evil Dead, it is much more effective at the end of the first movie than the reshoot is at the 7-minute mark of this one.
For sure. I mean, the first movie ends in like complete dread, you know. At least they do little cliffhanger doots at the end of both of these sequels, actually. But it does, like you're saying, the tone is just different. You don't get the same kind of oomph after the long, horrible night that Ash has in that first one, that it like doesn't matter and he's still captured by the evil in these woods. And you have to have such a weird pre-knowledge of the movie that they completely throw out the story for, pretty much, that they're relying on. They're leaning on that kind of reaction you had to the original movie's ending, which is way, way more powerful.
And I don't know if I said this already, but even though technically you get to the point where the first movie ends at the 7-minute mark of Evil Dead 2, you do have a lot of beats that kind of come back and are recycled later in this film, especially once other people get to the cabin with Ash. So, like, The tree scene, which
I was gonna say.
I think we didn't talk about it during the first one, horrific and bad and should not be in that movie.
One of the most upsetting things I can remember about this franchise. It is something that I was thinking about skipping, if I'm being honest. I think about skipping it every time I watch that first one, and he really shaped up, he kind of makes you think for a second in the Evil Dead 2 that it's going to go the same route, but I highly prefer her just getting absolutely skull crushed on a giant tree. I think that is just as horrific as it needs to be. I don't need her to be violated by the woods.
I agree. And Rami has come out and said that he wishes he had never done that scene, and I think there are even reports that maybe the financiers or a producer wanted it to be more explicitly violating and that Rami didn't really want to do. I don't think Rami has said that explicitly, but he said that he wishes that weren't in the movie, and I appreciate it's kind of an apology in the form of this sequel remake where he's like, see, I know that I should have done it this way the first time, and so I'm going to take those steps to make it better.
And again, that's my feeling about the entire second movie, basically. We saw the first draft, we saw the student film version, and then he had 5 years to refine what he wanted that story to be, and then we get Super Chad Ashley Williams in this one, who's just like the smoothest man of all time.
Not to mention how flashy the camera work is. Like, even Linda's head rolling into the camera and then it going black for a frame and then the shovel coming out from the camera as he buries her.
Yeah, it's a complete evolution. I love it. I love it so much. And I mean, the practical effects, again, I was mentioning, I appreciate the creature design being so grotesque in the first one, but if we're talking comedy here, the Pee-wee's Playhouse sequence with all of the like laughing inanimate objects, I straight up laughed out loud when he was like, he did the bit with the lamp where he was squatting with it and they both stopped at the same time.
Yeah.
They were best friends, him and that lamp. That was the funniest thing I have ever seen.
But all of the special effects in the world can't come close to Bruce Campbell's hand acting.
Oh my god. Incredible. He's dragging himself around believably with one hand. It is great.
It really truly feels like that hand is a completely different entity that happens to be connected to his body, and to the point that I have a hard time believing that it's just acting, if that makes any kind of sense. Like, there has to be some kind of greater special effect going on there, even though there isn't. It's just Campbell's own abilities as a physical actor, because this movie, for a lot of it, is, and not to say that the sound design is not extremely important to the Evil Dead films, as we mentioned with the first one, but in a lot of ways it has the visual grammar of a silent film, because Ash spends so much of this movie not talking, alone in a single location doing physical comedy bits.
Yeah, he's like front flips and falling down cellar stairs, like getting thrown down cellar stairs like a rag doll. He looks great. I mean, he is doing masterwork here physically. And I was watching that whole hand scene and I thought that he must have gone to some kind of like mime college or some kind of higher education in how to do something like that, because otherwise it could be like a Swedish Chef style, like someone else's arm is in his sleeve somehow, it almost felt like.
Yeah, I completely agree. It is crazy. It is crazy. Evil Dead 2 is so good, Seamus.
He's acting his life out in that movie, too. Just like he's got his sad moments about Linda, and he's got his angry moments when the rest of the gang shows up to the cabin. He's giving it his all. Right down to the, like, screams, man. His screams are legendary in this.
Down to Linda's ugly, ugly necklace that is a holdover from the first movie.
Oh, okay. There's something I want to talk about now that we've got into the prime Evil Dead. The rules make no sense, and that's maybe part of the charm of the Deadites, is that they're so evil that they can't get a hold on what the rules actually mean. But Ash can, like, change back into a regular guy, kind of just on his own free will, or, like, when he sees the necklace.
Yeah.
And, like, other people change back as a trick, and then they are actually Deadites the whole time, or they're dormant inside them for for a minute, but he just kind of gets to walk out of it a little bit because he's the main character and all that.
It's also unclear if you have to, because at first it seems like you have to die to become a Deadite, but some of the characters just get possessed by the evil. What is it just that you have a higher tolerance? Are you stronger against the evil, or is the evil just picking who's going to be the most manipulative?
To me, in the first one at least, it was pretty much every single person that turned, it was just like you have to be physically harmed even by like with an object, like the pencil or the tree branches in the other guy. And yeah, it's I don't know. It's very confusing if you want to like try to boil down the rules of the Necronomicon and like the weird language about defeating the evil. It's the sunlight is maybe a factor, even though so much of the Army of Darkness is in the daytime and all of that. It's very weird.
Well, it's cool that Rami is basically just whatever it takes for this sequence to happen, that's what the rules are going to be for the sequence. And I kind of wish Ash didn't turn into a Deadite the second time. I'm cool with him dying the first time, and then the sunlight bringing him back, that all makes sense to me. But yeah, the Linda necklace thing is a little bit weak, especially because I don't care about Ash. I don't care about Ash as a character. I don't care about Ash's relationship with Linda. I care about Ash as a Looney Tune in a house that is alive and evil and trying to kill him.
Bruce Campbell is who you care about. Ash is just charisma in a flannel, just trying to stay alive in there. And I mean, that's kind of what carries over to my interest in the Army of Darkness too, is like, I don't care about Ash really even there, where he should be the most fascinating as a man out of time.
It's also the one where he's given the most backstory and the most like attempt at a character arc. And I will say there are elements of Army of Darkness that expand on seeds planted in especially Evil Dead 2, because, you know, he's got a couple of quips in Evil Dead 2. He's got Swallow This. He obviously has the most iconic Groovy.
Right after, baby. Oh, I love it.
When he gets his chainsaw hand, which we haven't even talked about somehow.
The chainsaw hand, there's too little chainsaw hand. It needs to be start to finish chainsaw hand. And we did not get that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Army of Darkness time, which is.
I was gonna say we need to talk about the prophecy that comes through.
Yeah.
Just a last point about the Evil Dead 2 to bring us into the Army of Darkness. Everyone always talks about how Army of Darkness is so wacky and wild compared to everything else, but they're leaning into it fully by the time you're into the Evil Dead 2. So it did not shock me as much watching them back to back this time about how weird it gets.
I think the difference is that essentially Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, like I said to you earlier, are like Muppet versions of movies where Bruce Campbell is a cartoon and we're going to drop him into a genre. In Evil Dead 2, that genre is, what if we made Evil Dead 1 a cartoon? In Army of Darkness, that's what if we dropped him into a fantasy movie? Which is, I think, a fascinating direction to go with that, as opposed to... I mean, they do kind of have their cake and eat it too, because not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but for the vast majority of this movie, it's a pretty straight fantasy movie. And then they're able to pull you back a little bit and get you a little bit by being like, hey, but remember, this is also an Evil Dead movie. So you have the whole arc where Ash is falling in love with the medieval maiden, and they have their very, their courtly love, kind of trite, cliche romance, and then of course she gets captured by the evil, which of course she does because that's how these things go. She's a damsel in distress. But then they go, but this is an Evil Dead movie, so she's gonna die, and she's gonna turn into a Deadite, and she's gonna be one of the bad guys. And I think that is such a great payoff to Rami being like, I didn't forget what sequel we're making here all the way, even if it is a very different choice.
Yeah, that little holdover, you gotta have something when the rest of the Deadites are like Spy Kids 2 style stop motion skeletons, because that is not what I want in a Deadite. They're funny. They're basically battle droids from the Clone Wars where they're just like making funny commentary to each other.
I love the skeletons. I'm not gonna lie to you, Seamus.
I mean, they're fun, sure. I want more of the gross,
Yeah, I mean, they're not scary, and they don't do the thing other than barely a little bit with his girlfriend, who is also Miss Honey from Matilda.
Oh, that's why I recognized her. That is so weird.
But they do a little bit of it with his girlfriend, but the thing that I think to me makes the Deadites stand out against any kind of zombie or other supernatural creature is that they take their knowledge of who this person used to be and they really weaponize it to torture you. It's as much about the psychological torture of watching your decapitated, decomposing girlfriend do a weird stop motion dance with her head.
That will haunt me forever, if I'm being honest.
It's just as much about that as it is about trying to kill the living. I like that is part of it. And so, yeah, I agree. The skeletons are not as interesting in that capacity, but they're hilarious.
They're really
and I
funny.
love them.
Now that you made that point, though, about, like, the insanity that they're trying to cause, maybe that is more part of the rules of, like, who turns and who doesn't. Ash, in basically all three of these movies, has moments where he's like, I'm going crazy, and I'm going to look into a mirror to try to ground myself. He really does not have a lot of luck with mirrors in these movies. But
no, he really doesn't. Because...
Every time. The first one where the mirror is water, and he just flips out is hilarious. I love that so much.
And that's just such a great visual image that you're not expecting to happen. It's truly just a great horror haunted house image.
Absolutely. It is great. And I guess it is that mental torment that they're probably going for. We got to break these people physically and mentally. The girls are always getting attacked and then freaking out and running into the woods, and then that's where they get got because they're already, like, they're resigned to losing their mind and they're already hurt and all that kind of stuff. So maybe Ash just is physically and mentally more capable of fighting it off. I guess he chops off his own arm and barely flinches, so he's pretty strong.
Yeah. A farewell to arms, Seamus.
That is it made me laugh, Garrett. That's real dumb, but it really did make me laugh.
Yeah, I agree. I want to go back to the skeletons for 1 second.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't know if you thought this when you were watching it, but the skeletons kind of do the Apple Dumpling Gang ladder bit with the battering ram and the portcullis, or not the portcullis, the drawbridge thing that they do.
Do they? I didn't recognize any any Apple Dumpling shenanigans.
There's just a lot of, like, the classic image of one skeleton walks on and then the bridge comes through and then the other skeletons at the back end and things like, and like kind of flipping over each other and stuff like that.
Oh, those skeletons were all shenanigans. That is very true. By the end of this one, I did appreciate yet another cliffhanger, but I was, as a kid at least, again, watching these fairly younger, I always had a dream about, they did medieval Ash, let's get post-apocalyptic Mad Max Ashley Williams fighting the Deadites out here. I feel like that would have been an interesting, weird, stupid fourth movie to plop this character down into.
And that's not what Ash vs. the Evil Dead is, then, I take it.
No, I mean, again, I only saw, like, maybe 4 or 5 episodes in the first season, but it's straight up, like, it's him and, like, 2 people that work at the S-Mart that he works at are, like, getting into Evil Dead stuff.
Oh, that's fun.
Like,
I like that.
He's the old guy still working at S-Mart, and they're like, get a load of this loser, but he's still, like, a suave dude, because he's Bruce Campbell.
Yeah, I mean, sure, Bruce Campbell never lost... he might look a little bit different than he did in the 80s, but he never lost being Bruce Campbell, and I think that's the important thing.
Absolutely. I mean, he's so charming in the Multiverse of Madness as that hot dog salesman. I will stand by it.
I'm sorry, what did you just call the Pizza Papa?
Oh, sorry, the Pizza Papa always gets paid, and I shouldn't forget that.
You really shouldn't, but I have wondered, Seamus, for years and years... or at least not even wondered, I thought I knew how this movie would open. And it does not open even a little bit the way I thought that it would, because, honestly, this has so little in common with what the Evil Dead 2 cliffhanger is. Sure, I mean, by the end of the movie, they're all saying hail and putting their spears in the air, and he's got the chainsaw hand, and he's cutting up the flying evil Deadites, but...
Hell yeah.
I mean, like, this is so... like, he gets captured immediately, and sure, the car is there, and that's fun. And...
it is a very goofy little, like, I bet you're wondering how I ended up as a medieval slave. Hi, I'm Ashley Williams.
But also, I don't think this movie... if you're gonna have Ash get captured, you can't... It's tricky, because you kind of have to do it as a flashback to Evil Dead 2, because if it just started with the end of Evil Dead 2, if you watched, assuming somebody's going into Army of Darkness, a movie that does not have a 3 in the title or anything like that,
right?
Having not seen Evil Dead 2, imagine if you watched 10 minutes of a horror movie and then you watched Army of Darkness. I feel like doing it as a flashback makes a lot more sense.
I think it would as well, but they had some kind of vision for Army of Darkness, and they really went for it. I don't dislike Army of Darkness, as stupid and goofy as it is. I mean, I hate that I laughed at little baby, tiny mini Ashley Williams.
But those are so funny.
They're really funny. It sucks that they're so funny because it goes on for like so long for some reason, I feel like, but it's really funny.
My big takeaway, I think, from Army of Darkness is that I wish Rami did a more straightforward, high-budget fantasy adventure film, because there is such great visual storytelling in this. There's great sword choreography, adventure choreography. When he cuts down the counterweight and he rides the rope up to the top of the wall, and there's the pit escape is almost entirely just good visual action storytelling.
Absolutely, yeah. That the slave execution pit with maybe the one and only blood geyser in Army of Darkness. They push the one guy in first, and it's like insane amount of blood, and then never again. I feel like they were drowning Bruce Campbell in those other movies with blood. There are moments literally where you can hear Bruce Campbell be like, "Oh God!" Like he as an actor is done with the amount of blood they were spraying on him in that shot.
He talks about how Raimi really genuinely enjoyed torturing him making these movies, and I believe that because he tortures him a lot. And Army of Darkness, weirdly, he gets the least, not just with blood geysers, but they just don't put him through the physical ringer as much in this movie as they do in other films.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, character-wise, he's like slamming his head on like chimneys and burning his face on stoves, but he's not doing, like I said before, he gets thrown down those cellar stairs in the Evil Dead 2 like head first in that one shot. It's a lot.
He's also like basically if Johnny Bravo were an action star.
That's exactly what it is.
He's got so many weird one-liners in this that are so much more out of character. We already mentioned this a little bit when we were talking about Evil Dead 2, but they're just turned up to 11. I mean, come to Papa, hail to the king, well hello Mr. Fancy Pants, give me some sugar, baby.
Yeah, it is a lot. I mean, I loved every single one of them, but man, it's like, you're in a bad spot, guy. You are out of time and fighting the same evil threat. Like, you just have these locked and loaded? What the hell?
Also, I think it's an interesting angle that, well, of course, this old civilization is just used to the Deadites, so they just know what's going on with the Necronomicon and stuff. It's not hidden away somewhere in a cabin where you're completely helpless. They're like, oh yeah, no, the Deadites, we keep them in the traitor pit. Yeah, let's go over here and check it out.
Yeah, they really, I feel like they should have leaned into the angle more of like, the savior from the sky, he'll know exactly what to do, but they kind of just like, they give him very little instruction and he gets messed up there. I feel like he should have been a little more of the arbiter of how messed up those. I mean, I guess he forgets the words and he, messes around with the three Necronomicons.
Okay. That word bit, I don't think that. Okay, I don't know if you I don't know, maybe you've just seen this so many times that it didn't even enter your mind. The sheer horror as he was like an N-word. What N-word could this possibly be? Looking around to see if anybody else is around as I'm about to say I was just like, please don't do this. Straight
up didn't even clock for me. I was just like, oh, he's a silly boy. He's fumbling this magic words. I straight up did not even catch that.
I don't know if that's an intentional joke or not, if you can even call that a joke, but I was scared. I was like, please don't go where I'm so afraid that this is going to go.
But then it ends up in a pretty funny bit where he's just like mumbling the last word.
Yeah.
Like trying to pull a fast one on magic? I don't know. I thought that was a good resolution there.
I like him fighting the books like they're the Book of Monsters from Harry Potter 3.
And he gets his Beetlejuice face moment there with the first book, which is fun.
The one thing I do want to come back to on Army of Darkness, and I think I'm pretty much wrapped up on Army of Darkness thoughts. I really like the whole Richard and Arthur subplot, where Ash lets Richard go at the beginning, and then Richard brings his army back to fight the Deadites, and that's cool, and the idea that if Arthur had just killed Richard, that his civilization would have been doomed, and then they hug and become bros at the end. It's stupid, but I like it. I'm into
Honestly,
it.
I like it too, though. I would have even asked for more of that interaction in this movie with the weirdest... I mean, they ride through the Southern California desert, obviously, for a while there. I don't know. I feel like I would have appreciated more of that weird subplot that comes together. Because they like stand off with each other, and then they come to the middle and hug. And I was like, damn, this is great. I couldn't really care about the lady love interest in this one, who they have the steamy Top Gun style silhouette love-making scene in the middle of it. And I don't know, they could have replaced it.
I think my big takeaway is I wish she just died at the end instead of coming back magically. I mean, I know that we know Deadites can do that because obviously that's something Ash has done multiple times himself, but I kind of wish she just stayed a Deadite.
Yeah, me too. This movie, for as much as I like it, it has weird problems that, hey, if they ever made an Army of Darkness 2 where they do the same thing and they just, like, redo the Army of Darkness but make it better, I would have been there for that.
I think to wrap things up, I love all three of these movies. One of them is markedly better than the other two. Evil Dead 2, there's just nothing like it on Earth. I mean, I guess there's technically nothing like Army of Darkness either, really.
But I hear what you're saying. I really want to own these on 4K or Blu-ray in a little box set. A little Necronomicon box set would be nice. But Evil Dead 2, incredible. One of the best movies I have ever seen. It is a delight to watch. I'll watch it forever. That'll be the top of my list. I'll slowly chip away at that being my most watched Evil Dead after I catch up with these new remakes and stuff.
Yeah, I'm excited to get more into the extended Evil Dead universe, because truly, until I was prepping for this show, I had never seen anything but those first two, and now I'm ready to really start getting into the remakes, like you said, and even the show.
But what do you say we move on over to the reference this week?
Please, more Evil Dead for me. Yum, yum, yum. For today's pop culture reference, we're going to be talking about the Sam Raimi car. One of the most prevalent Easter eggs that can be found in almost every single Sam Raimi film is the inclusion of, quote, the classic, an Oldsmobile Delta 88. Raimi's father bought the car in 1973 and later passed it on to his son in time to be driven by Ash Williams in Sam Raimi's directorial debut, The Evil Dead, in 1981.
This legendary car can be seen in all three original Evil Dead movies, Raimi's 3 Spider-Man films, Darkman, Drag Me to Hell, The Gift, and his most recent blockbuster, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. The Quick and the Dead is Raimi's Western period piece, but the Delta 88 still appears in secret, as it was used to create a covered wagon to fit the film. Though Raimi did not direct the 2013 remake of The Evil Dead, director Fed Alvarez still included the classic to honor producers Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell and their mutual commitment to this decades-long reference.
I always love watching a new Sam Raimi and trying to figure out where the car is going to be. Sometimes it's pretty prominent. I mean, Evil Dead, all 3 Evil Dead movies. I was going to say Evil Dead 2 specifically, but all 3 of them.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's right there. It's a little bit boring in the Spider-Man movies. It's just Aunt May's car, but it's still fun.
And I mean, I actually even missed the classic in Multiverse of Madness when I first watched it with you. It's really on screen for like a second. It's getting like thrown through the air, I think.
Yep. And I mean, I was looking for it, I guess, because I think you and I agree that when we went into Multiverse of Madness, we were looking at it much more as a Sam Raimi movie than being excited about it as a Marvel movie. And
exactly.
It didn't really work as both, as we've covered on the show at length, but it's a fun time.
It's got its pieces in there. It has its fun horror elements that we can always sip on forever, but I thought Bruce Campbell was going to like pull up in the Delta 88 at some point in that movie, be like, come with me if you want to live, with a chainsaw hand or some crazy stuff like that.
The Pizza Papa Mobile?
Exactly. I thought it was going to be something like that, but, I do, in any inclusion, I do love to see it. I know that 2013 remake that I just referenced has more than its fair share of OG Evil Dead tie-ins that are more than just the the reimagining for the remake. So I would like to sit down with that one and clock all of those with you sometime.
I think that sounds like a great time, Seamus. But we can't have fun forever.
Because we have to do our due diligence. We've got to put on our very poorly visioned helmets and move on to Mando Bros.
Let's do it.
Now it's time for Mando Bros, where we break down the last 2 episodes of The Mandalorian on Disney+.
Those are... The Spies was the latest one, and do you remember what the first one of the ones we're covering was called?
The Jack Blacks.
Guns for Hire.
Guns for Hire. There we go.
Which,
yes.
Okay. I think we got... Okay. Just calling spoilers right off the bat in the interest of length for this episode. Here, actually, real quick before we get really, really into spoilers, just for the people who might be on the fence about this season. Seamus, you were wrong. This is a bad season.
You know what, Garrett? I'm defending this season now. Now this is going to be a real interesting Mando Bros, I think.
Okay. It's still spoiler warning, so we're into it. Come at me. Go, what you got?
I did not dislike the weird detective episode of The Mandalorian, the one where they're helping Jack Black and Lizzo with the droid threat on their weird kingdom world. I thought it was fun. I love to see battle droids and super battle droids in live action. There's a weird droid cantina that I didn't hate, though I thought it was very strange. I don't know. It was a side quest episode that I was not hating, mostly because of all the fun droid stuff. Great foot chase, lumbering after the Boston Dynamics robot that they kicked to the ground, lumbering around. I didn't hate it. I did not dislike it. I thought it was funny that Lizzo and Grogu are like buddies now because she offered him food.
I enjoy, Lizzo knighting Grogu is just a novelty in and
Sir
of
Grogu.
itself.
Come on, Sir Grogu.
My bigger problem is where it fits in this story as a whole than anything really specifically with the episode, even though I think that it is an ugly, trite, dumb episode.
I don't disagree, but I still liked it, damn you.
I think it's enjoyable for the novelty of it. I love seeing Christopher Lloyd here. He is having no fun. He's not really having any fun, but he's certainly here.
The fact that he was not some kind of proto-Snoke clone later in this series is a crime.
I do like the joke of him being like, Count Dooku was cut down in his prime, and I was like, was he? Was he, though?
Yeah, he's like separatist sympathizer to this day? Chill, man. The war's been over for a while. That's 2 wars ago.
Honestly, I think the bizarre opening was probably my favorite part of, like, the cool Quarren ship where they have the one Quarren captain suspended in a weird tank that then drains into the floor for her to walk around, and apparently the Mon Calamari that she's in love with was played by Tom Holland's little brother, which I think is fascinating.
That is very strange. Yeah, I was a little confused that weird storyline of their royal love just kind of got tossed out the windows there.
Why that scene was in the episode at all is kind of beyond me.
It's like introducing the other Mandalorians, but why...
They're not in this episode, so why would you? Why would you bother doing that?
They are at the end for an actually, I think, a very awesome Mandalorian on Mandalorian fight between Bo-Katan and what's his name?
Yeah, that guy who's a Mandalorian.
Yeah. One of the many of those guys now.
The Harry Potter-ass Darksaber logic at the very end of this episode.
Yeah, the Darksaber is like... You remember when we saw the Darksaber in Season 1? We saw Moff Gideon cutting himself out of his TIE fighter, and we flipped out because we're like, oh my god, this is very cool and important, and it's a reference to Clone Wars stuff that feels like it's not like a cheaper reference, and now it's just like, who wants the Darksaber? Toss it around. It's not as important as I thought the quest to find where it would land is going to be.
But also, it is too important. I feel like the whole point at the end of last season was being like, it's dumb that you care how you got the Darksaber. It's a symbol. It's not the Elder Wand. A lot of Harry Potter in this episode. We're talking a lot about Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And I do not care. This whole season has been predicated on the Darksaber, and it doesn't work for me. I don't like. I've made it pretty clear that we're gonna get very into this when we talk about the spies.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about any of this Mandalorian garbage. I am so done. This season, once again, has no direction. It has no cohesion. It technically has a plot, but there's no drive to it. Our characters aren't engaged, and for this, we're 2 episodes out from the finale, and they're like, we're just gonna do CSI Navarro. And I'm like, why? If the Mandalorian were still the A-team in space, that would be one thing. But it's not anymore. They're trying to make it this epic, overarching quest for Mandalore, quest for the throne, quest to fight the Empire, heir to the Empire, Ahsoka's here, Luke is here, Grogu is the hope of the Jedi. Like, all this stuff. But they're also trying to be the A-team still. And I hate it, Seamus. It makes me mad. It's not Book of Boba Fett or anything, but it drives me crazy. Because, like I said, there are things in this episode that I liked. I think Jack Black and Lizzo being in Star Wars are fun. I like that Din knows how to commune with the Ugnaughts.
Yeah.
Probably my favorite part of that episode. But also just the fact that they're doing like a Law and Order crime procedural, and once again not even bothering to lean into the way things look, is really making me frustrated, especially because, dude, watching that recap where they were going all the way back to the first season and showing us stuff, this show used to look so good, and it looks so bad now.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, that is a shame for us to get the little bit in the recap. They were like, oh yeah, this show's dope, and then side quest that is just like fine looking. I mean, granted, I remember enjoying this episode a lot because I was like, yeah, there's like 5 more episodes to go in the season. They had another one where they're just having a little side quest fun, and then now we're at the finale next week, and there are more weird episodes that start things that not only don't get resolved, but like I don't even really mind that they're not getting resolved. Like, there's all the pirate stuff that is now trying to come back around with the pirates on Navarro that I'm like, why are we even trying to reconnect this into the season at this point? And it's very weird.
That's how I feel about a lot of the stuff going on this season, where I almost wish that they had just been a better reveal than the weird plant and misdirect that they have been doing. Like, I think we're just, are we ready to cross into the spies?
I think I know what you're about to say too, so go on.
I hate the stupid Grogu mech. I hate it.
Yeah, IG-12 or whatever.
I was way more pumped about it maybe being a Babu Frick mech for the 10 seconds it was that, because I think that this doesn't make sense for the character, really. It certainly doesn't make sense for Din, who is just, like, going along with this for some reason, even though he clearly thinks it's a bad idea. In Season 2, the whole arc, we've talked about this multiple times over the course of Season 3, where the Season 2 arc was Grogu is learning dangerous lessons from Din about violence. And now we're going to give him an IG mech that is, for violence.
I mean, yeah, he shows that he could use it to, like, use force in the Spies episode.
I guess I think it's funny that he is the no, yes. But even the trajectory of the mech in this episode, I feel like there could have been a little bit more storytelling with, like,
yes, I agree. Because I don't completely hate the mech thing going on here. It feels like it's not different enough from just him hovering around in the baby carriage at this point. He just has the capability to say yes and no with a button now.
Yeah, and the other thing for me is they do the whole bit right when he gets the suit where Mando is like, no, he's too young, he shouldn't have it, da-da-da. And then later they make the decision to go and reclaim Mandalore. And I feel like there should have been a beat in there. Just, it wouldn't have taken very much, and I think it would have fixed a lot of my problems with the storytelling in this episode, where, Din's already said no, he can't have the mech, so, thanks, Carl Weathers. Mm-hmm. I appreciate it, but we're good. And then coming back being like, if you're going to go to Mandalore, you're going to need to be able to take care of yourself. And then that is the reason he actually lets Grogu have the mech. Even that little bit of change would have given so much more depth to me and so much more of a reason for there to be the IG mech, other than, once again, it just feels like Favreau and Filoni, they want to play with their toys, and it's like, what if he had a mech suit that was an IG droid?
I mean, there's gonna eventually be a toy where you can fit a little Grogu into the chest cavity of an IG toy. I mean...
Lego is scrambling right now.
Because like what you're saying, once they get to Mandalore and they get ambushed by the Mando troopers down there, he like turns to Grogu in the mech suit and he goes, "You good? You gotta follow us now, like keep up, we're in the fight." And it's like the jump from him being so unokay with it as a whole to now I'm not even gonna like take an active part in you keeping up with this group. You're good now, keep up with us. It seems like the jump is a little dramatic for one episode.
And then that brings us to who they're fighting, which we haven't even talked about, which I think is the big part of the reason that people are so gaga for this episode, which is, of course, the thing that Star Wars has learned from Marvel, which is if you do a lore dump with a bunch of cameos, people are going to get excited because you have a clear mention of Thrawn with ties to Moff Gideon, and you have Hux and Captain Pellaeon, who, I mean, Pellaeon is a legacy character from Star Wars Legends, fan favorite, big role in Heir to the Empire, and Thrawn's right-hand man, who is, I think, mentioned and off-screen during the Battle of Lothal in Star Wars Rebels, but I don't think we actually see him, and now, he's here, and he's the stepdad from Terminator 2, and the other big one being that they're making sense of the First Order, that Pellaeon and Hux, aka Domhnall Gleeson's Hux's dad from...
Constable Hux, I think, or is what they call him?
From the sequel trilogy, who, I don't know if you caught who was playing him.
I was trying to figure out who that was. Who played him?
That is Domhnall Gleeson's brother, Breen Gleeson, who is also good. Sam Bang himself from Logan Lucky.
Oh my god, yeah, I for sure didn't recognize him from Logan Lucky. But that is very, I mean, that's good casting. He really looked like him. And of course, they with that cameo, they do mention Project Necromancer, which is just like, all right, at least they're doing a little something with what we all assumed with the cloning stuff from the first season of The Mandalorian is finally coming back through with what we assumed was Snoke clones.
Which is interesting because it is and it isn't, because he's like, I don't share your preoccupation for cloning. But then at the end of the episode, Gideon mentions that he's trying, like Pershing brought up, he's trying to do space eugenics. He's trying to build the best version of an ultimate super soldier using Beskar and the Force and all of this other stuff that he's working on there. Which it's insane to me that Moff Gideon has been essentially the main antagonist of this show for 3 seasons now. Full 3 seasons. He has no character. He has no personality. He is just an evil guy trying to do Empire stuff. He's trying to bring back the Empire, and I don't see any zealous in him. I don't see a cause. I just see, hey, we got an intimidating guy to be our main bad guy, and he's gonna be evil and menace Mando, and okay, I've got a little rant now.
Okay, alright.
Because they have, and I'm gonna get, like, really through the whole episode.
Well, lay it on me.
They have broadened the scale of The Mandalorian, but they have not truly raised the stakes in any way. I am not any more invested in this story than I would be if I didn't know any of the characters, whether or not they're Bo-Katan or Mando or Moff Gideon or Grogu. First of all, Gideon himself should have been the one to kill Paz Vizsla at the end of this episode, not the fan service with the Last Jedi Snoke royal guards. Yeah. It's a messier, wider scoped season that has no threat to the characters or core relationships at the heart of this show. Din and Grogu don't have any real vendetta against Gideon. It's all world building, posturing, cosplaying, playing with your action figures. And I'm tired because as they bring things back like the IG droid or all of the little notes from the very beginning of the season that seemed like one-off episodes, they don't feel like coming together like they did in previous seasons. They feel hollow and unearned. And to me, there's nothing that the season finale can do to tie together the storytelling that will redeem what the rest of this season has been. Like I said earlier, if they want to be Space A-Team, do that. If you want to be a big epic, do that. But you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't do both. And this show's trying to do both and failing at both.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I feel like the parts that I'm appreciating about this season specifically, thinking back on them, watching this show week to week and having time to be like, I'm appreciating this episode as it comes out almost on its own, and thinking about the parts I actually did really like. There might be a few things they could do in the finale, for me at least, that it can wrap up, things that I would like in an enjoyable way, but they've just thrown all of this other stuff into the wind that I want to have been expanded, where we got episodes that, like I said, I like the CSI episode a lot with Jack Black, but it does really nothing. The entire point of so many of these episodes where they're like, well, here's what we're gonna do. They say right at the beginning of the episode, here's what we're gonna do. And then I think like, okay, this fits into the greater idea of what they've been trying to do in this season. There maybe are gonna pull together more things about the Mandalorian clans or even the Darksaber to come back around a little bit. And then it feels like they constantly get sidetracked and abandon whatever it is that they like almost sometimes literally say out loud at the beginning of the episodes that they're gonna do. And then now we're kind of here at the end. They're throwing in Gideon in person finally, where the lady Imperial spy who did my boy Pershing totally dirty. She's like kind of not doing anything either, even though she got a little espionage tweak at the beginning that gave me hope that maybe Pershing or that Pershing episode tone would have been back in any sort of way. And it's just kind of not there. And I wish it was better. I still enjoyed this season, but it is about as meandering as it could have gotten without me fully dropping off of this season entirely.
And I agree with you that episode to episode there are things that I liked. Again, I agree that the CSI episode is fun and different, but as a season of TV, it doesn't work. And I'm a guy, I'm not anti-filler episode, because I know that's the thing that people talk about all the time, is I hate all these filler episodes. And, that's what TV is for, is to explore corners of a universe and what characters do in non-sequitorial situations. That's why they're not movies or series of movies. But when I genuinely don't feel like there's any deepening to these characters or broadening of their horizons or true stakes for them outside of immediate physical danger, it's very hard for me to stay invested in characters that I genuinely cared about, even going through season 2, a season that I famously on the show had a lot of problems with. Still at the core, there was that really genuinely emotional moment of Grogu saying goodbye to Din and taking off the helmet, and the connection between them was at the very heart of that episode's conflict, of that season's conflict, and I just don't see that this season.
We talked a lot about how, like, Bo-Katan could have very well been a much larger kind of main character force in this season, and how that would have probably zeroed in on a lot of the meandering problems we had. Give a quest that makes sense, have a threat that's not just like, maybe some pirates that maybe Moff Gideon kind of hired to harass Navarro or whatever. And there in that scene specifically where Gideon is talking some crap about like Thrawn's role in their secret Imperial Shadow Council, whatever the hell. I thought that was going to be the moment of maybe seeing Gideon outside of that role of the cold, confident, angry, evil character. I say loosely character. It's just Juan Carlo Esposito in armor. That's what they were going for. They're like, this guy is evil because the actor and how he does his whole thing. And his confidence in that scene, I wanted to get checked, and for him to actually have to be in the room with all of these other people that have a similar kind of Imperial loyalty. Maybe Thrawn even hearing him say those things about him and personally putting him in his place to show that he's more than just the quote-unquote antagonist of the whole season, even though he just showed up, more or less.
I think they had a great opportunity to do that at the beginning of the season. If they hadn't done this weird time jump and the weird stuff with Book of Boba Fett, where Gideon, sure, he's playing Iago, he's playing Gollum with his captors, but it's the only time we've ever seen him really, truly not in control. He is scared of Luke Skywalker. He has been captured by the Mandalorians. There is genuine jeopardy and peril for him in a way that there's never been for that character, and that's the most interesting he's ever been. And they had an opportunity similar to what you said, where where they had an opportunity with this meeting to really get into what this character is when he's in jeopardy, because that's when you learn who characters are. And the one thing in this episode that gave me just a little bit of like, oh, that's actually kind of interesting angle, is that he is still hellbent on completing the purge of Mandalore. This idea that he is like truly genocidal, and he wasn't just doing it because the Empire told him that Mandalore was an enemy of the Empire. He's like, no, I want all of them dead, and I want what is the thing that is useful to me from their culture to be mine. Like, it's true, like a colonizer mentality. And of course they got one line of that, and that was all
exactly.
we actually got.
Oh man, well, next week is gonna be an interesting one. I feel like the finales of this show have never really let me down, at least in terms of like, you know, it'll be exciting enough where they're gonna be setting up fun things. Maybe we'll get one last look at Keller and Beck in a flashback somewhere that'll save my soul. But you know, I'm gonna see how it plays out. I am excited for Ahsoka probably more than this at this point. But
I can agree with that, especially because it's got characters I'm invested in. That's the reason I'm excited about Ahsoka, is because I'm invested in those characters, even if I'm not super invested in Ahsoka right now, like I said during our news segment. But like Paz Vizsla's sacrifice, people all over the internet are like, wow, how moving. I'm like, who cares?
I know. I've been on the fence about that character since he was introduced, basically, and I like big brute Mando design. He fights in a real cool way. He puts his Gatling gun up on like his shoulder or whatever. But yeah, I felt like it was an unearned moment where they're like, look at how bad you should feel. This super important Mando guy, the one other Mandalorian who you know the name of, kinda, and I just, yeah, whatever, you know?
I also am very curious to see if the finale actually has an answer to a big question that I have from this episode. Who are the spies? Seamus, who are the spies?
I mean, there's that one spy, the lady spy in the very beginning, and that's
but
maybe
what does she have to do? Like, she's not the name of this episode. She's not the namesake of this episode. Is it Charles Parnell and Hot Skinny Pete? Are they spies for Gideon? Is that what they're hinting at? Like, what is the actual spy angle here, and is the finale even going to have an answer to that, or is it just going to be a weird name that lives on?
They just threw it up there, and they thought nobody would notice. I mean, I was expecting like a sudden terrible, like maybe even those Mando troopers were like ex-Death Watch, and that could have been some kind of betrayers. I don't know. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see if they do anything about that. They mentioned Pershing in this episode, but they didn't mention that he was dead. So maybe I'm still holding up for him to come back in the finale in some way.
If I would love to watch the Pershing show. I would love to watch so many shows that aren't whatever this is, and
yeah.
I'm sad about that.
Andor Season 2 one day, my friend. One day. But what do you say we go and save the rec center?
Please, I would love to. Save the rec center! Now it's time to save the rec center, where we bring you our weekly recommendations. Seamus, what's on your docket?
I have a show for you this week that just got a revival recently that I'd never even heard about. It's one of the funniest sitcom-style shows I've ever seen. I binged like a season and a half with my brothers when I was in Italy because all of the Italian TV was not doing it for me. 2009's Party Down. Have you heard of Party Down, Garrett?
I've watched the first season of Party Down so many times and never gotten past the first season.
My man, I fell in love with Party Down. It is some of the funniest TV I never knew existed. I obviously love Adam Scott. Lizzie Kaplan is great. Jane Lynch is an absolute treasure. Ken Marino is the star of Party Down for me. He is the funniest man. He should be in everything. Absolutely phenomenal. I am gonna definitely finish out season 2. I'm gonna get on the new stuff. I don't know how that's gonna be in terms of like time jump. It already has a weird structure in the second season because of how I'm sure you remember the first season ends. But I am truly a big fan of Party Down, and I hope this new revival season is good. I don't know. I hope it has the same spirit because I feel like I don't see such it's such a harsh kind of comedy in this
it's
show.
so mean.
It's very, I think it's from some of the people who made It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, so it's kind of that similar, like every single main character is a huge a-hole pretty much, except for like a handful, but I love it. I'll love Martin Starr forever and everything, and he's so funny and so bad in this as like the hardcore sci-fi writer. It's phenomenal.
Are we having fun yet?
Are we having fun yet? I like cringe harder every time he says it, because it's like kind of a sad story for Adam Scott's character. He's like, I'm resigned to have this terrible job because I'm giving up forever. He's good at a weird character like that, the character that's given up. But what do you got for me for the Rec Center?
I have kind of a weird one, Seamus. The 2000 sports comedy, The Replacements, starring Keanu Reeves and Gene Hackman.
I have heard of The Replacements before? What sport is that even?
It is football. It's a football movie where all of the players for this NFL team are on strike, so they have to get a team of replacement players, and so it's a scrappy, hilarious ensemble of guys who they could... It's essentially Moneyball, but played, like, really broad.
Hell yeah, that sounds great, though.
And Gene Hackman is their coach, of course, and Keanu Reeves is the star quarterback. But it has a fantastic cast of bizarre caricatures as the rest of the football team, including Orlando Jones, Jon Favreau, who's basically just doing an Adam Sandler riff.
Hell yeah.
Reese Ifans is in it. It's, what's his face? We just saw him in Logan Lucky, actually. Logan Lucky coming up yet again. From The Office, the guy from The Office.
Oh, the guy who plays Roy in The Office?
Yeah, he's a deaf football player, and he is terrific in The Replacements. But, I mean, it's not perfect, but it's a very, of its time, fun time at the movies. Gene Hackman and Keanu Reeves, charming your socks off romp. It's on HBO Max right now.
That sounds great, actually. The two things I binged on my travels in Italy were Party Down and just a weird amalgam of sports movies for some reason. So I'm in like a sports movies kick right now, and that sounds like a lot of fun.
Well, I like a sports movie, but I'm not usually seeking them out to watch. But I really enjoyed this one, and I especially don't like football movies. Because I especially don't like football.
I mean, football movies aren't my top of the list either. You got to go hockey and basketball and baseball first for sure. But the cast alone sounds like I would have a really good time, and I like the concept. You always love the concept of a scrappy sports team who's just trying to get to the top, the underdogs.
Absolutely, and it's a good time. It's really fun, and it's my rec center for this week, Seamus.
Well, that's definitely on my... I'm going to go put that on before HBO Max turns into just Max and everything is shuffled around. So I've got a ticking clock. But that wraps us up for the show this week. If you want to reach us on social media, that's at @PCR_podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. If you want to reach the show directly, you can email us at popculturereferencepod@gmail.com.
Next week, we're going to be having regular guest star Rocky Kari on the show yet again, our in-resident Star Wars boy. Not that we aren't our own in-resident Star Wars boys.
It's the Three-Timers Club. We're going to get him a sport jacket. Is it the 3 or the 4-timer?
This is the third time.
Our longest running returning guest.
We've never had a returning guest, actually, other than Rocky, and now he's going to be on for a third episode before anybody else has even gotten on their second episode. But we're going to be talking about Jedi Fallen Order in honor of the new Jedi Survivor game coming out. So I've got it re-downloaded on my PS5 right now. I'm excited to jump back, play a little bit more of that game, and come back next week and talk about it.
I cannot wait. That is going to be one hell of a Star Wars time with that and the Mando finale. So it's gonna be nerd central over here, and it's gonna be great.
I am looking forward to it, and we will see you next week.
Hail to the king, amigos.